"Step aside, Cole. That woman dies in the snow with the rest of them, and you'll die too if you ride out there." Nathan Cole shoved the man into the wall. 3 years I've waited for her. 3 years of letters. You think a little weather's going to stop me now? You've never even seen her face. I don't need to. He was already mounted. She crossed 2,000 miles on my word alone. I'll be damned before I let this mountain bury her 2 miles from my door. What Nathan couldn't know was that one passenger on that doomed coach had followed her every single mile, waiting for the storm to finish what he'd been sent to start. If you love a story about love forged in the harshest winters of the old American West, take a moment now to subscribe and follow this story all the way to the end. And leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story has traveled. You can't go after that coach, Nathan. No man can. Listen to that wind, it'll bury you both. Then load the lantern and stop talking. The station master Hollis slammed his hand on the counter hard enough to rattle the tin cups. You don't even know if she's on it. Could be the coach didn't make the relay. Could be they turned back at the pass. She's on it, Nathan said. She wrote me she'd be on this one. Clara Whitmore doesn't change her plans. You've never laid eyes on the woman. I've read 3 years of her letters. That's more than most men know about the wives they've slept beside for 20. Nathan threw a coil of rope over his shoulder and yanked the door open against the storm. If I'm not back by dark, don't come looking. I won't have 2 of us frozen for one fool's errand. Hollis caught his sleeve one last time. And if she's already gone, if you find a coach full of dead people? Nathan stopped. For a moment, the howl outside seemed to fill the whole room. Then I'll bring her home anyway, he said. She came 2,000 miles to be buried in a county she's never seen. The least I can do is dig the grave myself. And he was gone into the white. Inside the stranded coach, the cold had stopped being painful. That frightened Clara more than the pain had. Ma'am, you need to keep moving your hands. The voice belonged to the elderly woman across from her, Mrs. Pruitt, whose teeth chattered between every word. Once you stop feeling them, that's when the devil's got you. I'm trying. Clara forced her stiff fingers open and shut. How long have we been stopped? 2 hours, maybe 3. The driver had crawled inside an hour ago, given up trying to free the wheels, and now sat slumped against the door with frost in his beard. Driver says the horses are down, says nobody's coming. Somebody's coming, said a man in the far corner. Clara turned toward him. He'd boarded at the last relay station, a tall man with a low hat and a coat too fine for a Wyoming winter. He had spoken maybe 4 words the entire journey. Now he was watching her, the way a hawk watches a field. How can you be so sure? Clara asked him. Because pretty girls like you always get rescued. He smiled, and the smile didn't reach his eyes. It's the rest of us who freeze. Don't speak to her like that, Mrs. Pruitt snapped. I'm only saying what is true. Clara looked away first. Something about the man made the cold in her chest go deeper than the storm could reach. She had felt eyes on her for the entire journey at the depot in Omaha, on the platform in Cheyenne, every time she'd glanced over her shoulder. She'd told herself it was nerves. A woman traveling alone to marry a stranger imagines all kinds of shadows. But this man had been on every coach. What's your business in Red Creek, mister? She asked, surprising herself. His smile widened a fraction. Same as everyone. I'm here to collect what's owed me. And who owes you? You'd be surprised, ma'am. He leaned back. You'd be very surprised. A fist hammered the side of the coach. Mrs. Pruitt shrieked. The driver came awake with a curse, and through the frosted glass, a shape huge, snow-caked, more animal than man, wrenched at the door until the ice cracked loose and it swung wide. Is anybody living in here? The shape roared over the wind. We're alive, the driver shouted. God Almighty, we're alive! A lantern thrust inside, and behind it a face weathered scarred along one cheekbone, with 2 days of frost in his stubble, and eyes that swept the coach and stopped on Clara as if every other soul in it had vanished. Clara Whitmore, the man said. She could not have spoken if her life depended on it, so she only nodded. Something moved across his face that she would spend years trying to name. Relief, grief, disbelief, all of them at once. Then we don't have long, he said. Everyone out, now. Out there. Mrs. Pruitt clutched the seat. We'll die out there. You'll die in here for certain. There's a line shack a quarter-mile up the draw. I rode the fence to it. We go together hand to belt, nobody lets go. He was already pulling the driver up by the collar. What's your name, old man? Hollis sent you. You're the rancher, Cole. Nathan Cole. Move. They went out into it, roped together like beads on a string. Nathan breaking the snow ahead of them, with his shoulder, the lantern swinging from his fist. Clara had her hand fisted in the belt of his coat, and even through 2 layers of wool, she could feel that he never once slowed for the cold, only for them. Don't stop, he kept shouting back. You stop, you sleep, you die. Talk to me, Clara, talk to me. What's the first thing you'll do when you're warm? I'll thank you, she gasped. Better than that. Try harder. I'll make you eat something. You look half-starved under all that snow. She heard him laugh, actually laugh into the teeth of the storm. There she is. Keep walking. The fine-coated man came last on the rope, and twice Clara felt the line jerk hard, as if he'd let himself fall. The second time, Nathan stopped the whole chain. You drop again, mister, and I'll cut you loose myself. I slipped, the man said. Slip on your own time. These people are mine to bring in. The line shack was barely more than a roof and 4 walls, but there was a stove and dry wood and a door that latched. Nathan had a fire going before any of them had stopped shaking, and he moved among them pulling off frozen boots, rubbing life back into Mrs. Pruitt's blue hands, ordering the driver to keep the old woman talking. Only when the others were settled did he come to Clara. He knelt in front of her and took both her hands in his, and she watched the iron go out of him. All at once, watched the man who'd dragged 5 people through a blizzard become for one breath someone almost afraid. You're really her, he said quietly. I'm really me. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry I don't understand. You looked at me like, I've waited years for you, Nathan said. The fire popped. Behind them, the fine-coated man went very still. Mr. Cole. Clara pulled her hands back an inch. We've exchanged letters for 3 years. That is true. But I came here for a marriage of arrangement, of sense. You write to me like a man arranging cattle and weather, and now you say you've waited years like a man in love. He said it plainly. I know how it sounds. It sounds like something you can't possibly mean. You don't know me. I know you spent your last dollar on a stranger's promise. I know you buried your father 18 months ago, and you've been running ever since. I know you write the truth, even when a lie would serve you better. He let go of her hands and sat back on his heels. No, I don't know the woman. Not yet. But I knew the heart in those letters, and I have been alone a long time, Clara Whitmore. Longer than I'll say in front of company. She had no answer. She'd crossed a continent braced for a cold, practical man and a colder, practical life. And instead, on her knees in a freezing shack, she'd found something she had no defense against. Nathan, she whispered, why did your hands shake just now? You carried us through hell, and they never shook once. Why now? He looked at her a long moment. Because every winter takes something from me, he said. I rode out today certain this one was going to take you too. That's a touching story. The fine-coated man's voice cut across the little room. He'd warmed enough to find his smile again, and he was looking at Clara with a new, sharper interest. Whitmore, he said, rolling the name in his mouth. I knew I'd heard it. Your father wouldn't be Samuel Whitmore of St. Louis, the surveyor. Clara's whole body went cold in a way the storm had never managed. How do you know my father's name? I make it my business to know names. The man tipped his hat back. Samuel Whitmore. Did good work, your father. Right up until he did work he wasn't paid for. Stuck his nose into other men's land, other men's deeds. Asked a great many questions for a man who should have kept surveying his little fence lines. My father died of fever, Clara said. Her voice had gone thin. 18 months ago. Did he now? The man's smile never wavered. And before the fever, did he leave anything with you? Papers, a box. A letter saying, open this if anything happens to me. The shack had gone dead silent. Even Mrs. Pruitt had stopped her trembling. Nathan rose to his feet slowly the way a big animal rises. Who are you, mister? A traveling man, same as you said. He spread his hands. I only find it remarkable. A surveyor's daughter, sole heir to all his papers, runs 2,000 miles to the edge of nowhere to marry a stranger she's never met. Almost as if she were running from something, or carrying something she shouldn't. I'm not carrying anything, Clara said. I sold everything I owned. I have one trunk and the clothes I'm wearing. Then you won't mind if it's searched. Nathan stepped between them. Nobody's searching anything, he said. You're a guest under my roof tonight, mister, on account of the storm and nothing else. When it breaks, you'll go to town and you'll keep going. Are we clear? The man held his gaze, and for the first time the smile dropped completely, and what was underneath it was worse. You don't know what you've taken in, Cowboy, he said softly. She's got powerful men looking for her. Men with money enough to buy this whole county and you with it. You'd do well to put her on the next coach east and forget you ever read a single letter. That's not going to happen. No, the man agreed. I expect it isn't. Pity. Clara couldn't sleep that night, though. Exhaustion dragged at every limb. She lay near the stove and watched the fine-coated man sleep or pretend to across the room, and she thought about her father's last winter. She had never believed the fever story. Not entirely. Her father had been strong as an ox and twice as stubborn, and the night before he took ill, he had gripped her wrist hard enough to bruise and said, Clara, if anything ever happens to me, you don't go to the law, you don't go to the bank, you go where I told you and you tell nobody. And then he was gone in 4 days, and she had been too shattered to ask what he meant. You go where I told you. But he had never told her where. Had he? Or had she simply not been listening? You're not sleeping. She startled. Nathan had crossed the room without a sound and lowered himself beside her, keeping a careful distance, his eyes on the door and the sleeping man both. Neither are you, she whispered. I don't sleep with strangers in the room. He nodded at the fine-coated man. And that one's no traveling salesman. He knew my father's name. I noticed. Nathan's jaw tightened. Clara, I'm going to ask you something, and I need a straight answer because there might be men's lives riding on it. Did your father leave you anything? Anything at all? She hesitated. There was a Bible, she said finally. His Bible. It's the only thing I kept. It's in my trunk back on the coach. He'd written all through the margins. I always thought it was just scripture notes, verses he liked. She felt the blood leave her face. Nathan, he wrote numbers, all through it. I thought they were verse numbers, but some of them aren't. Nathan was very quiet. That trunk's still in the coach, he said. Yes. And come morning, the first thing that man does is walk back down to that coach. The fire snapped. Outside, the wind had begun at last to die, and somehow the silence that crept in behind it was more frightening than the storm had been. We have to get there first, Clara breathed. We have to do better than that, Nathan said. He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes now beyond tenderness, something hard and old and ready. Clara, the men your father crossed, if they sent that one all the way to Wyoming, they're not going to stop at one man. They're coming, maybe a week behind him, maybe a day. Then I'll go. I won't bring this down on you and your people. I'll take the next coach and— No. He said it so flatly that she fell silent. I told that man you weren't getting on any coach, and I meant it. You came here to build a life, and by God you'll get the chance to. But understand me. He leaned close, his voice dropping so the room couldn't hear. The marriage I asked you here for was supposed to be the easy part. Everything after this is going to be a war. Clara held his gaze. She thought of her father's bruising grip. Tell nobody. She thought of 2,000 miles of looking over her shoulder. And she thought of a man who had ridden into a blizzard for a woman he'd never seen, who had carried 5 strangers through hell, and only let his hands shake when he reached her. I crossed a continent for a stranger's promise, she said. I'm not afraid of a war. You should be. Then we'll be afraid together. She put out her hand. Partners, Mr. Cole. He looked at her hand, and then slowly he took it, and this time in the firelight she felt his fingers tremble again, and she understood at last that it was not weakness she was watching. It was a man who had buried hope so deep he'd forgotten where finally daring to dig it back up. Partners, Nathan said. And across the room in the dark, the fine-coated man opened his eyes and smiled. By the time the gray light came, the fine-coated man was already standing at the door with his coat buttoned and his hat low, and the smile he'd worn in the dark was gone as if it had never been. Storm's broke, he announced. I'll be walking down to the coach to fetch my things. Anyone who's got luggage down there, I'd be happy to carry it up. That's a kind offer, Nathan said, and he was up off the floor before the man finished speaking. But the lady and I are riding down ourselves, on what your horse went lame in the drifts. I heard it favoring all night. He'd been listening then. Clara felt her stomach drop. Nathan only reached for his rope and his rifle. Then we'll walk, he said. Slow, same as you. The man's eyes flicked to Clara. You don't trust me, Cole. I don't know you. Out here, that's the same thing. Smart man. He pulled the door open. But a slow one. I've got long legs and nothing to carry yet. And he stepped out into the snow and started down the draw at a pace no one half frozen had any right to manage. Nathan? Clara was already on her feet. He's going for the Bible. I know it. He'll be there before us. He said it himself, the horse is fine. Nathan was buckling his coat. I told a lie to a liar, that's all. She threw a shoe, not a leg. Hollis keeps a forge at the station, and I shod her myself an hour before you woke. He looked at her. Can you ride double and hold on through deep snow? I can hold on through anything. Then let's go beat a dead man to a Bible. The horse came up lame-looking, and proved sound, and they went down the draw at a hard trot, while the fine-coated man was still floundering through drifts on foot 100 yards below them. He heard the hooves and turned, and Clara saw the moment the smile died on his face for good. Cole, he shouted. You sly devil. Yeah. Nathan put his heels in, and they swept past the man close enough that Clara could have touched his hat, and behind them she heard him cursing into the wind, and she could not help it. She laughed. Don't laugh yet, Nathan called back over his shoulder. He's not the dangerous one. He's just the one they sent to find you. That sobered her fast. The coach sat half buried where they'd left it, the dead horses already drifting over, and Nathan was off the saddle and prying the boot open before Clara had both feet down. Her trunk had slid hard against the back panel. She fought the latches with numb fingers and threw the lid back, and there it was, beneath the folded dresses she'd never have a use for out here. Her father's Bible, the black leather worn soft as a glove. That's it. She clutched it to her chest. Then back on the horse. We are not opening it in the open. Nathan, what if the numbers are nothing? What if I dragged us out here over a dead man's verse notes? Then I'll have lost an hour and shot a horse for no reason, and I'll thank God for it. He boosted her up. But you didn't see his face last night when he said your father's name. He didn't come 2,000 miles for nothing. Hold the book and hold me. She did not get a chance to open it on the way up, because that was when the second thing happened, the thing neither of them had braced for. A rider came down the trail toward them. Not the fine-coated man who was still a black speck cursing in the snow behind. A new rider on a good horse, riding easy a star pinned to his coat. That's Marshal Briggs, Nathan said under his breath, and Clara felt his whole body change against her. Go careful, go quiet. Don't say anything about the book, not one word. Let me talk. You don't trust the law. I trust Briggs about as far as I trust that man behind us. Maybe less. Hush now. The marshal reined up in front of them, a heavy, comfortable man with a face like a friendly dog and eyes that didn't match the face at all. "Nathan Cole," he said warmly. "Heard the coach went down, came out to count the dead, and here you are saving the living. You're a credit to this county." Just neighborly marshal. And this would be the bride. Briggs touched his hat to Clara. "Miss Whitmore, we've all been waiting on you. Nathan's about the only bachelor in Red Creek hard enough to survive a wife, and the only one stubborn enough to mail away for one." He chuckled. His eyes never left her face. "You bring much with you long journey a body collects things." "Just my trunk," Clara said. "Mind if I take a look? Got to file a report on the wreck, insurance and such, list the goods." "It's just dresses, Marshal," Nathan said. "And a dead man's Bible. You want to count her petticoats for the report, you'll embarrass the lady and yourself." Briggs laughed big and easy. "Fair enough, fair enough." He gathered his reins. Then, as if it had only just occurred to him, "A Bible, you say?" "Whose?" "My father's," Clara said before she could stop herself. Briggs nodded slowly. "Surveyors are pious men in my experience. All those straight lines. God and geometry." He smiled at her. "You hold on to that Bible, Miss Whitmore. Things a father leaves, they're worth more than they look." And he rode on past them down the trail, straight toward the floundering, fine-coated man. Clara's hands had gone cold again. Nathan. He knew. The way he said it, he knew about the book. "I caught it too." "Then they've already got the law. They've got a lawman." Nathan's voice was grim. "There's a difference, and we'd better pray it matters. Now hold on. We're going home, and we're bolting the door, and you're going to read me every number your father ever wrote." The ranch, when they reached it, was not the lonely cabin Clara had pictured from his letters. It was a working place, smoke from 3 chimneys, men breaking ice in the troughs and forking hay against the cold, and every one of them stopped to stare, as Nathan rode in with a woman behind his saddle. A wiry old hand with one bad eye came forward and caught the bridle. "Well," he said, "she's real. Boys owe me money, ma'am." He tugged his hat. "Name's Cobb. Been running the hands here since this one was knee-high. He treat you right on the way in, or do I need to take a stick to him?" "He carried 5 people through a blizzard," Clara said. "Course he did. He's a fool that way." But Cobb's good eye was warm. "We kept the stove hot. Wasn't sure you'd actually come. Wasn't sure anyone would marry a man who courts by mail like a coward." "I'm standing right here, Cobb," Nathan said. "I know it. Get her inside before she freezes worse than your manners." Inside, with the door bolted and the men sent back to work, Clara spread the Bible open on the table, and Nathan stood over it, and for a long while, neither of them breathed. "Read me one," he said. "They're written in the margins, beside the verses." She turned pages with shaking hands. "Here, Genesis. Beside in the beginning, he wrote 47-112-N. That's not a verse." "No." She kept turning. "And here, Psalms 47-098-W. And another T-14-R-9. Nathan went very still. "Say that last one again." T-14R9. Township 14, Range 9. He looked up at her, and his face had changed. "Clara, those aren't scripture notes. That's how surveyors mark land. Township and range, that's a legal description of a parcel. Your father wasn't writing down verses. He was writing down land." "Whose land?" "That's what those numbers will tell us if we can read enough of them." He pulled out a chair and sat down hard. "Do you know what this means? Your father took a Bible, the one thing nobody searches, the one thing a man can carry into a church or a courthouse or his own grave, and he hid the location of every stolen parcel inside it, in plain sight. For 3 years it's been sitting in your trunk. And these men think I know where it is. They think worse than that." Nathan rubbed his face. "They think you can read it. They think your father told you what it means. That's why they didn't just kill you on the road. A dead woman can't lead them to anything. They need you alive and talking, right up until you're not useful anymore. Clara sat down across from him. Then I have to become useful to myself faster than I become useless to them, she said quietly. I have to understand this before they make me explain it. Nathan looked at her a long moment. You're not what I expected, he said. You keep saying that. I keep meaning it. They worked through the morning, Clara reading numbers and Nathan matching them against an old county plat map he kept rolled behind the stove, and slowly a picture began to form, and it was uglier than either of them had guessed. This parcel here. Nathan stabbed the map. Township 14. That's the Hendersons' old place. Widow Henderson lost it 3 years back. Bank called her note, said her husband owed money nobody ever saw the paper for. She's washing laundry in Cheyenne now. And this one, his finger moved, that's the Tate Quarter section. Tate hung himself when they took it. And this one, Clara, every single number in this book is a family that got run off their land by paper nobody could fight. My father surveyed all of it. Your father surveyed it honest, and somebody else filed it crooked. Nathan sat back. He must have found the gap. The honest survey and the filed deed didn't match. He could prove the land was stole. So he wrote it all down where nobody'd look, and then he died of a fever, Clara said bitterly. Strong as an ox, dead in 4 days. The kitchen was quiet. You think he was poisoned? Nathan said. It wasn't a question. I think a strong man doesn't die in 4 days, and I think he knew it was coming, and I think he sent me away with the only weapon he had and never told me it was loaded. Her voice broke at last, the grief she'd outrun for 2,000 miles, finally catching her at a kitchen table at the edge of the world. He let me think I was running toward a marriage. I was carrying a bomb the whole way and I didn't even know it. Nathan came around the table. He didn't touch her. He just crouched down so they were eye to eye. He sent you to the one place he thought you'd be safe, Nathan said. He read my letters, same as you read them. He knew the kind of man you were writing to. Clara, your father didn't aim you at a husband. He aimed you at a shield, and I aimed to be one. She looked at him through tears she refused to let fall. Why? She whispered. Why would you put yourself between me and powerful men over a woman you met yesterday? Because I let winter take everything from me once before. His voice went rough. And I swore the next time it came for someone of mine I'd be standing in the door. I'm not yours. We're not even married. No, Nathan agreed. Not yet. A fist hammered the door. Clara slammed the Bible shut. Nathan was across the room with the rifle in his hands before the second knock landed, and he set Clara behind him with one arm. Who is it? Cobb, you damn fool, put the gun down. We got a problem. Nathan unbolted. Cobb stood in the doorway, hat in hand, his good eye troubled. Riders on the South Road, he said. 4 of them. Marshal Briggs leading, and that fancy fella from the coach, and 2 I never seen hard-looking. They're not coming social, Nathan. Briggs has got a paper in his hand. A paper, Nathan repeated. Held it up so the boys could see. Said he's got a warrant. Cobb's jaw worked. Said it's for the woman. Said Miss Clara Whitmore is wanted in the Missouri Territory for the theft of property belonging to the estate of her late father, and he's come to take her into custody. Clara felt the floor tilt under her. That's a lie, she breathed. They're calling the Bible stolen property. They're going to arrest me and take the book, and there won't be any trial. There won't be any arrest. Nathan's voice had gone flat and cold and certain. Cobb, how many men can we put on the porch in the next 2 minutes that can hold a rifle? 8, 9 with me. Then we put 9 on the porch. Nathan, Cobb hesitated. That's a U.S. Marshal out there with a warrant in his fist. Real or not, you raise guns to a marshal, you're an outlaw the rest of your life. There's no coming back from it. Be sure. Nathan looked at Clara, and Clara understood all at once exactly what he was offering and exactly what it would cost him. A life he had built up from grief, a ranch, a community that respected him, the whole hard-won decency of the man he was about to set it all on the table for a woman he'd known for one night over a Bible full of numbers. "Nathan, don't," she said. "Don't burn your whole life down for me. Let them take me. I'll find a way to—" "Cobb," Nathan said, not taking his eyes off her. "Put 9 men on the porch." "Nathan, she came 2,000 miles on my promise." His voice never rose. "I gave her my word last night that nobody was taking her anywhere. A man's word's worth nothing if it only holds in fair weather." He finally looked at Cobb. 9 men. Now. And somebody ride hard for the Henderson place and the Tate place and every family in that book and tell them Samuel Whitmore's daughter has come to Red Creek, and she's brought the proof. Tell them if they ever want their land back, today's the day they earn it." Cobb stared at him a long second. Then his bad-eyed face split into something that was half grin and half snarl. "Been waiting 3 years for somebody to say that," he said, and he was gone. Out on the South Road, the 4 riders were close enough now that Clara could see the paper in the marshal's hand, and the fine-coated man riding easy at his side, and she could see even at that distance that he was smiling again. Nathan handed her the Bible and a second rifle. "You ever fire one of these? My father taught me. He said a surveyor's daughter should never be helpless in open country." Her hands closed around it steadier than she expected. "He must have known. Even then. He must have known he was raising me for this." "Then load it," Nathan said, "and stand where I can see you. And whatever happens in the next 10 minutes, you do not let go of that book." She looked down the road at the marshal and the smiling man and the 2 hard strangers coming on at a walk in no hurry at all, the way men ride when they think the thing is already finished. It was not finished. It was just beginning. The 4 riders stopped 20 yards from the porch, and for a moment, nobody moved at all. 9 rifles on the rail, 4 men in the road, and between them a silence so heavy Clara could hear her own heart. Marshal Briggs lifted the paper over his head. "Nathan Cole," he called friendly as ever. "I've got a lawful warrant for the arrest of Clara Whitmore. You hand her over peaceable and this stays a misunderstanding. You raise one of those rifles and every man on that porch hangs beside you. Now I know you. You're a reasonable man, so let's be reasonable." "Read it," Nathan called back. "What's that?" "The warrant. Read it out loud, all of it. Let my men hear what crime a girl off a coach committed." Briggs's friendly face flickered. "It's a legal document, Cole. It's not a Sunday sermon." "Then it'll read just fine. Read it, Marshal, or admit there's nothing on that paper but your own handwriting." The fine-coated man leaned over and murmured something. Briggs's jaw tightened. "The charge is theft," Briggs said. "Theft of property from the estate of Samuel Whitmore." "What property?" "That's not—" "What? Property?" Nathan's voice carried flat across the snow. "Say it in front of 9 witnesses, Marshal. Tell these men exactly what it is you rode out here to take off a woman." And there it was, the thing they couldn't say. Because to name it was to admit the Bible mattered, and to admit it mattered was to admit why, and Briggs knew it, and the knowing sat on his face like a slap. "Documents," he said finally through his teeth. "Survey documents." A low sound moved through the men on the porch. Cobb spat over the rail. "Survey documents." Cobb repeated loud enough for all to hear. "You mean the proof old Whitmore had that half this county got robbed by paper? That's your stolen property, Marshal. That's the crime that the girls got the receipt." "Cobb, you ignorant old! I lost a cousin to your paper." "Briggs," Cobb roared, and his rifle came level. "Tate was my wife's blood. You hung him with a deed nobody could read, and now you ride out here calling the truth stolen." "Easy, Cobb," Nathan said quietly. "Easy. Not yet." It was the fine-coated man who broke it. He nudged his horse forward a step past the marshal and pushed his hat back so Clara could see his whole face for the first time in daylight. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "we've been rude. We've never been properly introduced. My name is Royce. I work for the men who hold the paper on every acre in that book of yours." He smiled. "And I'm the only man here who can keep you alive." You followed me from St. Louis, Clara said. I followed you from your father's funeral, ma'am. I was there. Closed casket. Did you ever wonder why a fever doesn't close a casket? He let that land. Your father didn't die quiet, Miss Whitmore. He died hard, and he died because he wouldn't say where the Bible was. 4 days. He held out 4 days with men working on him, and he never gave you up. You should know that about him. He was the bravest fool I ever watched die. Clara's whole body had gone to ice. The rifle shook in her hands. You were there, she whispered. You watched. I held the lamp, Royce said simply. It was my job. The same as it's my job now to tell you that you can end all of this. Give me the Bible. Tell me the man wrote it and you can't read it, which is true, isn't it? You can't read a word of what those numbers mean. So you give it to me, you go inside, you marry your cowboy and you live. Or you hold on to a book you can't even read and you die over it the way your father did, slow. And you take every man on that porch with you. Don't listen, Clara, Nathan said low. He's done talking sense now, he's just talking poison. He held the lamp, Clara said. She couldn't stop saying it. He watched my father for 4 days. Clara, Nathan's voice cut through. Look at me, not him, me. She turned. His eyes were steady. He just told you the most important thing you'll ever hear, and he was too proud to know he was doing it. Your father held out 4 days. He died so that book would reach somebody who'd fight. You give it to Royce, now your father died for nothing. You hold it, and he died for something. Which is it going to be? Clara looked at the Bible in the crook of her arm. He died for something, she said, and she raised the rifle. It might have started right there, 9 guns and 4, but it didn't, because that was the moment the riders came over the South Rise. Not Royce's men, not the marshals. Riders coming hard, a dozen of them. Then 24 ranch families on plow horses and mules. The Hendersons and the Tates, and names Clara didn't know. Men with old shotguns, and boys with squirrel rifles, and women too. Riding astride with their skirts hiked, and at the front of them, a tiny gray-haired woman on a sway-backed mare, who Clara would later learn was the widow Henderson herself. Cobb's rider had reached them. The whole valley had heard that Samuel Whitmore's daughter had come, and brought the proof, and they had come for their land. Royce's smile finally fully died. Marshal Briggs! The widow Henderson screamed across the snow, her thin voice cracking with 3 years of swallowed rage. You took my home with a forged note. You stand in that man's road, and I will personally see you hung from the courthouse you built on stolen ground. There's 2 of us and 40 of them, one of the hard strangers muttered to Royce. I can count, Royce said. This was supposed to be quiet. I'm aware of how it was supposed to be. Royce's eyes moved over the crowd, over the porch, over Clara and the Bible, and Clara watched him do arithmetic she couldn't follow. Then he did something that frightened her more than any gun. He laughed. Well, he said. Whitmore raised himself a daughter worth the trouble after all. He gathered his reins. Marshal, we're leaving. Leaving, Briggs sputtered. We've got a warrant nobody believes, and 40 angry farmers who'd love to test how fast we can ride. Royce backed his horse. There's a better way to do this than getting shot in a dooryard. Miss Whitmore? He touched his hat to her, and the courtesy was the most chilling thing about him. You've won the morning. Enjoy it. But understand me, that book is worth more than this whole valley, and men who want it that badly do not ride away and forget. We'll meet again, you and I. And the next time your cowboy won't see me coming. He wheeled his horse. Briggs, now. And the 4 of them rode south and were gone, and the valley erupted, cheering, weeping, the widow Henderson sliding off her mare and being caught by her neighbors, and Cobb whooping like a boy. Clara lowered the rifle. Her arms were shaking so hard she could barely hold it. We won, she said. No. Nathan was watching the empty road where Royce had vanished. We didn't win. He let us live. Those aren't the same. A man like that doesn't ride away unless he's already thought of something worse. That night, the ranch was full of people who had no homes to go back to, families bedding down in the barn and the bunkhouse and the front room, and for the first time in 3 years, the valley felt less like a graveyard and more like a town again. The widow Henderson found Clara by the stove. "You've got his eyes," the old woman said. "Whose?" "Your father's. He surveyed my husband's claim, 15 years back. Honest man. Wouldn't take a meal he hadn't earned." She took Clara's hand in both of hers, papery and cold. "When they took my house, child, I prayed every night that God would send somebody. I'd about given up. And here you come off a wrecked coach in a blizzard with the proof sewn into a Bible. You tell me that's not the hand of the Almighty. I didn't do anything. My father did. I just carried it. Carrying's the hardest part, girl. Anybody can know a thing. Carrying it 2,000 miles without breaking, that's the saint's work." The widow squeezed her hand. "Now, can you read it? The book?" Clara hesitated. Across the room, Nathan was deep with Cobb over the plat map. "I can read the numbers," she said carefully. "I can't read what they prove, not yet. The townships and ranges tell me where. They don't tell me how he knew the deeds were forged. There has to be more. The numbers are only half of it." The widow's face fell. "Then it's not enough. Knowing where the stolen land is, that won't stand in a court. They'll just say the survey's wrong, not the deed. We need the how. We need whatever proves the paper was faked." "I know." Clara's voice was tight. "I've been thinking it all day. My father wrote down where, but he was too careful to stop there. Somewhere, there's a why, the thing that connects the forged deeds to a name, to the man at the top." She looked toward the dark window. "Royce works for someone. Briggs answers to someone. There's a man none of us have met yet sitting somewhere warm who has never once dirtied his own hands. That's who my father was really writing about. And until I find his name in this book, we don't have proof. We have a treasure map to 40 crime scenes and nothing to nail to the man who ordered them. It was Nathan who found it near midnight, long after the families slept, the two of them, alone at the table, with a lamp burning low." "Clara." His voice was strange. "The numbers your father wrote. You said some had a letter you couldn't place. Read me those again, just the ones with the odd letters." She turned to where she'd marked them. "Here, M14, and later M3, and M22. I thought M might be a township abbreviation, but it never fit the map." "It's not a township." Nathan set down his pencil. "I've been staring at this 2 hours. M, 14M, 3M, 22. They're not land. They're meridian markers. No. No." He stopped. His face changed. "Clara, what if M isn't a place at all? What if it's a who?" "A who? A man, M, somebody whose name starts with M, and the numbers after. What if they're not coordinates? What if they're dates, or amounts, payments?" He was leaning forward now, the words tumbling. "What if your father didn't just record the stolen land? What if he recorded the bribes? M paid Briggs on the 14th, M paid the land office on the 3rd. What if this whole book is a ledger, and M is the man who paid for every forged deed in the county, and your father knew his name?" Clara stared at the worn black book in the lamplight. "Then there's a list," she breathed. "Somewhere in here there has to be a list. A page that says what M stands for. My father wouldn't write a man's initial 50 times without writing his name once somewhere safe." She was tearing through the pages now, the thin paper hissing. Where would he put it? Where would he put the one thing they'd kill for? Not the front. Not the back, that's the first place. She stopped. Clara. She had turned to the very center of the book, to the page that fell open easiest, because it had been opened most the page between the Old Testament and the New. And there in the gutter in her father's small, careful hand was a single line of writing she had passed over 100 times as a printer's note. She read it twice. The color left her face. Clara. What does it say? She turned the book so he could see, and Nathan read it and went absolutely still, and when he spoke his voice had dropped to almost nothing. That can't be right, he said. It's his hand. I'd know it anywhere. Clara, do you understand who that is? That's not some land baron in Cheyenne. That name, That man eats supper at the territorial governor's table. That man appoints marshals. That's who's been hunting you." "M," Clara whispered. That's what the M was. The lamp guttered. Outside a dog began to bark, and then another, the whole pack of them frantic. And from the barn, a horse screamed, and Cobb's voice rang out across the yard, sharp with alarm. "Nathan, riders! Riders on the north road! Nathan, there's fire! They've fired the line shack! The whole ridge is lit up!" Nathan was on his feet with the rifle before the sentence ended. "He didn't ride away," Clara said numbly. The Bible clutched to her chest, the terrible name still burning behind her eyes. "Royce? He never rode away. He just went to fetch more men." "Stay in this house." Nathan caught her face in one hand hard and fast. "Whatever you hear, you do not come out. You take that book, and you get in the root cellar, and you do not open that door for anyone whose voice you don't know. Not even mine if it sounds wrong. You understand me?" "Nathan, promise me, Clara." "I promise." He kissed her once, quick fierce the first time with no plan to, and no time to wonder at it. And then he was gone, out the door into the dark, and the dogs, and the rising orange glow on the ridge. And Clara stood alone in the lamplight, with her father's name for the devil in her hands. And outside, the first shot cracked across the valley like the sky breaking open. The first shot was answered by 20, and then the night came apart, and Clara did not go to the root cellar. She got as far as the cellar door with the Bible in her arms before she stopped, because she could hear them out there, Cobb shouting, the families screaming. Nathan's voice somewhere in the orange dark, organizing men who'd never fired a gun in anger, and she understood with sudden brutal clarity that hiding the book was not the same as saving it. If they took the ranch, they'd find the cellar. They always found the cellar. So she did something else. She tore the page. The center page. The one with the name. The one that mattered more than all the rest. She ripped it clean out of the gutter, folded it small, and pushed it down into the bodice of her dress against her own heartbeat. Then she set the gutted Bible on the kitchen table in plain sight, open like a thing forgotten in a panic. Let them take the book. The book was a map. The name was the bullet, and she would carry the bullet on her body or die with it there. Then she loaded the rifle and went to the window. Out in the yard, Nathan had the men down behind the stone watering trough, and the hay sled and the riders, Clara counted 8, 10 more coming, were circling at the edge of the firelight, shooting the dogs, shooting the windows in no hurry, content to burn and frighten. "They don't want to charge," Cobb yelled. "They're waiting us out. They fire the buildings one by one till we got nowhere left. Then we don't give them time," Nathan shouted back. "Clara's got the proof inside. We hold till dawn. Riders go for the territorial judge in the morning, and every one of these men hangs. We just have to live till sunup. 3 days that storm could come back, Nathan. Then we live 3 days." A rider broke from the circle and galloped close, and a voice Clara knew called out over the gunfire, Royce easy and amused even now. "Cole, you're a hard man to discourage. I'll give you a choice, and I'll only give it once. Send the woman out with the book, and the rest of you walk away tonight. Every man, no charges, no rope. Keep her and I burn you down to the foundation stones and salt the ash. You've got till that barn's roof falls in to decide." And as if he'd ordered it, the barn roof caught. The family's horses were already out. Cobb had seen to that, and the flames climbed, and in the new light, Clara saw the men's faces along the trough and saw the doubt move through them like a sickness. They were farmers. They had wives in the front room. And Royce was offering them their lives. She saw old Cobb turn and look back at the house, at the window, at her. And she made her choice before they could make it for her. She walked out the front door. "Clara!" Nathan came up off the ground. "Get back inside. Get back." "Stop," she said, and her voice carried clear and strange and steady across the whole burning yard. "Everyone stop." And strangely, they did. The guns went quiet. Even Royce's men seemed to hold their breath, because there was something in the sight of her standing alone and unhurried in the firelight that didn't fit a siege. "Mr. Royce," she called. "You want the Bible? It's on the kitchen table. Send a man, one man unarmed, and he can walk in and take it. I won't stop him." "Clara, no!" Nathan started toward her, and Cobb caught him, held him. "Let her talk, boy," Cobb hissed. "She's got something. Look at her face. She's got something." Royce hadn't moved. "And why?" he called slowly. "Would you hand me the one thing keeping you alive?" "Because I finally read it," Clara shouted. "All of it. Do you understand? I read the name your master never wanted written down. And I'll tell you something, Royce, it's not in the book anymore." She tapped the side of her own head. "It's in here. You can burn the Bible. You can burn this whole ranch. But the man you work for, the man who eats at the governor's table, his name is in my memory now, and there are 40 witnesses in that house who heard me say it tonight. You kill me. You kill the one person who knows it. You let me live. I tell a judge. Either way." Her voice cracked like a whip. "Either way. Royce, your master is finished." It was a bluff, stacked on a truth, stacked on a folded page against her heart, and she threw it out into the dark and prayed. A long silence. The fire roared. "She's lying about the witnesses," one of Royce's men muttered loud enough to carry. "Ain't no 40 people heard a name." "No," Royce said slowly, "but she's not lying about reading it." And Clara heard at last a different note in his voice, not amusement. Calculation, fear maybe of a kind. "She knows the name. Look at her. She knows it. Then we kill her, and it dies with her." "You idiot," Royce said. "If she dies with the name still secret, my employer's safe. If she dies after telling a courtroom full of farmers I'm the man who let it get out, and he'll bury me deeper than her father." For the first time, Royce sounded genuinely uncertain, a man whose simple errand had become a thing with teeth. This is no longer a job a bullet fixes. And then the night cracked open a second time, because down the north road, the way the riders had come, there were hooves. A great many hooves, and a voice bellowing through a horn, and lanterns, dozens of lanterns. "That's—" Cobb stood straight up behind the trough, heedless of the guns. "Nathan, that's the town. That's Red Creek, that's Hollis, and the whole blessed town. Somebody rode for help. I sent the widow's grandson at the first shot," Nathan said hoarsely. "Didn't think he'd make it through." The men came on 40-50, the merchants and the smith and the saloon keeper, and the preacher men who'd watched this valley get robbed for 3 years and swallowed it because the law and the money were the same hand. And now here was a chance with the proof in the house, and Samuel Whitmore's daughter standing in the firelight to be on the right side of it for once. Royce's men broke before the town reached them. They were hired guns, not believers. They'd signed on to frighten farmers, not to fight a county. They scattered into the dark, and Royce. Clara watched him. Royce sat his horse one moment longer, looking at her across the burning yard, and tipped his hat to her one last time, and was gone. Only one rider didn't run. He came forward instead, slow into the light, and the firelight caught the star on his coat. Marshal Briggs. "It's over, Briggs." Nathan had the rifle up. "Your guns ran the towns here. Get off that horse." "It's not over." Briggs's voice was very calm, and Clara realized he had a pistol already drawn hanging at his side, and that he was looking not at Nathan, not at the town, but at her. Royce was a fool. He thought this was about a book. It was never about the book. He raised the pistol and pointed it at Clara's chest, and a terrible quiet fell. "It's about the name, and there's only one way to make sure a name dies." He thumbed the hammer back. "I'm sorry, Miss Whitmore. You shouldn't have been so brave. Your father wasn't in the end. He begged." "Don't you say his name," Clara said. "Don't you dare. Briggs, you fire that gun and 50 men cut you down where you sit." Nathan's voice shook. "You'll die for nothing. I'm a dead man either way the moment that name reaches a judge." Briggs's hand was steady. "At least this way I take her with me. At least this way I—" The shot was enormous. Clara felt nothing. She looked down at herself, baffled, alive. Then she looked up. Briggs was sliding off his horse, and behind him, in the dark at the edge of the firelight, sat the widow Henderson on her sway-backed mare, her dead husband's old shotgun still smoking in her thin arms, her face a mask of 3 years' grief, finally fully paid out. "That," the old woman said, in a voice that did not shake at all, "was for my Thomas." It was nearly dawn before the fires were out, and the wounded were tended. There were wounded 3 of the hands and 1 townsman, none dead. A mercy, nobody could explain, and the town had ridden home, and the families had bedded back down, and Clara and Nathan stood alone at last, in the gutted kitchen, with the smell of smoke in everything. She took the folded page from her bodice, and laid it on the table between them. "I never read it out loud," she said quietly. "I never told the witnesses anything. There were no 40 people who heard the name. I made it all up, Nathan, the whole speech. It was a lie." "I know," he said. "You knew standing there watching me bluff a killer, you knew. I knew the second you walked out that door with your chin up that you'd thought of something I hadn't, and I'd best keep my mouth shut and let you do it." A tired, crooked smile. "You're the smartest person I've ever stood next to, Clara Whitmore. It's going to take some getting used to." She didn't smile back. She'd been holding something through the whole long night, and now, with her hands finally still, it came up out of her. "Nathan, in the cellar doorway when the shooting started, you kissed me." Her voice was unsteady. "And the first night in the shack, you said you'd waited years. You keep saying these things like a man with a whole story behind them, and I have nearly died 3 times since I met you, and I still don't know you, and I think—" She swallowed. "I think before I let myself feel one more thing for you, I need to know why. Why you? Why you really rode into that storm. The truth this time. All of it." Nathan was quiet a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat and gestured for her to sit too, and he looked at his own scarred hands on the table. "6 years ago this winter," he said, "I had a brother, younger, Daniel. And I had a girl I was going to marry, name of Sarah. There was a sickness came through the valley, came on the cold, the way they do. Took 20 people in a month." He didn't look up. "I was off buying cattle in Cheyenne when it hit. By the time I got the letter and rode home 4 days hard riding, they were both gone. Daniel and Sarah both. Buried a week before I reached the graves." His thumb moved over an old scar. "I wasn't there, Clara. I was off doing business while the 2 people I loved most froze and died and called for me, and I swore on those 2 graves that I would never again be 100 miles away while winter took someone I cared about. I'd be there, in the door, every time." "Nathan, let me finish or I never will." His voice was rough. "After that, I didn't live. I worked. I built this place into something so I'd never have to stop moving. 6 years. And I told myself I was done, that a man only gets 1 chance at a family, and I'd missed mine standing in a stockyard in Cheyenne." He finally looked up. "And then 3 years ago a letter came. Some matchmaker's circular sent it to half the bachelors in the territory, I expect. But the woman who'd answered it, she didn't write like the others. The others wrote about my cattle and my acres. You wrote me 3 pages about your father, and a book you'd read, and how you'd never marry a man who needed you small to feel large." A breath. "I read it 11 times, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt something that wasn't grief. I felt like maybe I hadn't used up my 1 chance after all. I felt hope, Clara, and it scared me worse than the sickness ever did." "You waited years," Clara whispered. "Not for a bride." "No." His eyes were wet, and he didn't bother to hide it. "I told you the truth in that shack, and you didn't believe me, and I don't blame you. I wasn't waiting for a wife to cook and keep my books. I was waiting for a reason. A reason to believe a man could lose everything to one winter and still have something good waiting for him in another. You were that reason before I ever saw your face. So when I heard the coach went down, when I thought this winter was going to take you too, before I'd even had 1 day of you," his voice broke clean in half. "I rode into that storm because I would rather have frozen reaching you than live 1 more year as the man who stayed safe in Cheyenne. Clara was crying now and didn't care. She reached across the table and took his scarred hands in both of hers. The same hands that had trembled in the shack that she'd thought were weak, that she now understood had been shaking under the weight of 6 years of buried hope, clawing its way back into the light. "My father sent me here to be safe," she said. "He thought he was sending me to a shield." He was. "No." She gripped his hands harder. "He sent me to a man who was as broken as I was, and didn't know it, and needed mending just as bad. He didn't send me to be protected, Nathan. He sent me to be a partner. I think—" She laughed through the tears. "I think my father read your letters and saw exactly what I'd find here. The stubborn old fox. He aimed me at you like one of his survey lines, dead straight, all the way from St. Louis." Nathan turned his hands over and held hers. "Then there's only one thing left to ask you," he said. "And I'd have asked it 3 years ago if I'd had the nerve. I never courted you for sense, Clara. I told myself I did. I lied. So I'll do it right here in a burned-down kitchen with smoke in my eyes." He held her gaze. "Marry me. Not as an arrangement. Not for the ranch or the safety or the proper thing to do. Marry me because I have been waiting my whole life for somebody who'd walk out the door into the gunfire instead of hiding behind it, and there you are. There you've been. The whole time." Clara looked at the folded page on the table, the name that would bring down a man at the governor's table. She looked at the smoke-blackened kitchen and the gutted Bible, and the 2,000 miles behind her, and the scarred hands holding hers. "Yes," she said. "God help us both, yes." And outside the broken window, over the smoking ridges and the melting drifts, the first real light of dawn came up gold across the Wyoming mountains, and for the first time since she'd stepped off that doomed coach into a blizzard, Clara Whitmore was not afraid of what the morning would bring. The gold light hadn't fully filled the kitchen before Cobb was pounding back through the door, and whatever peace had settled over the two of them lasted exactly as long as it took him to speak. "Nathan, the widow's grandson, the boy who rode for the town he'd just come back in. He didn't go straight to Red Creek last night." Cobb was out of breath. "He rode past it. He rode all the way to the territorial seat, to the federal judge." Nathan was on his feet. "He's a child, Cobb. He doesn't know the federal judge from a fence post. He knew enough to put the proof in front of a man who answers to Washington and not to the governor." Cobb's good eye was bright. "Judge Aldridge. Rode in an hour ago with 6 deputy marshals at his back, federal men, Nathan men the territory don't own. He's at the Henderson place right now, and he's asking for Samuel Whitmore's daughter by name." Clara's hand went to the folded page against her heart. "Then he already knows," she breathed. "Somebody told him the name. Or your father did," Nathan said slowly. "Clara, what if your father didn't just hide that book and run? What if he wrote to somebody too? A man he trusted outside the territory before they got to him? What if the Bible was never the only copy of the truth? What if it was the spare?" Judge Aldridge turned out to be a lean gray man with a voice like a closing door, and he received Clara in the widow Henderson's reclaimed front room with the folded page flattened on the table before him and the gutted Bible beside it. "Miss Whitmore." He didn't rise. 18 months ago, I received a letter from your father. It contained no names, he was too careful for that, but it told me that if I ever heard he'd died, I was to find his daughter, and his daughter would be carrying the rest." He tapped the folded page. "This is the rest." "You knew," Clara said. "For 18 months you knew, and you let them hunt me across 2,000 miles. I knew a man I'd never met claimed a crime I couldn't prove." Aldridge's voice didn't change. "A letter without names is wind, Miss Whitmore. I could not move 6 federal marshals against the most powerful man in this territory on the word of a dead surveyor and a Bible I'd never seen. I needed the name and the proof in the same room, sworn by the same witness." He looked at her at last. "I needed you alive and standing in front of me holding both. Your father gambled 3 years of your safety on the chance you'd survive long enough to do exactly this. I'm sorry for it, but it worked." Clara's throat was tight. "He used me." "He trusted you," Aldridge said. There's a difference, though. I'll grant it's hard to feel from where you're sitting. He turned the page toward her. Now, this name. The townships in the Bible, the dates, the amounts your father built a ledger of bribes and forged deeds. But a ledger in a dead man's hand is only as good as the living person who can swear to where it came from and what it means. Will you swear to it? In a federal courtroom against this man? He let the silence stretch. I'll tell you plainly, Miss Whitmore. He has killed your father and tried 3 times to kill you. If you take that stand, you will be the single most dangerous thing in this territory to the single most dangerous man in it. He has reach you cannot imagine. Some witnesses don't live to testify twice. Clara looked at the name on the page. Then she looked at Nathan standing by the door with his hat in his hands. My father held out 4 days, she said. Strapped to a chair with a man holding a lamp, and he never gave them this. She put her finger on the page. I'm not going to be the one who finally does it for them. Swear me in, Judge. I'll say his name in front of God and Washington and anybody else who cares to listen. The trial was held in the territorial capital under federal seal, and it was the kind of thing the Valley would tell stories about for 50 years. The surveyor's daughter in a borrowed dress laying a worn Bible on the rail and reading a dead man's numbers into the record. One township at a time, while the most powerful man in Wyoming sat at the defense table going slowly gray. But the twist nobody saw coming walked in on the 3rd day. The prosecution, Judge Aldridge announced, calls a final witness, Mr. Elias Royce. Clara's whole body went rigid. Nathan half rose from the gallery before she caught his arm. Royce took the stand in a clean coat, and he did not look at the man at the defense table, and he raised his hand and swore the oath in a voice gone flat and tired. You worked for the defendant, Aldridge said. 11 years. You participated in the intimidation, fraud, and murder described in this courtroom. I held the lamp, Royce said, while better men died. And for the first time, Clara heard something in him that wasn't a performance. I came to Wyoming to take a book off a girl. I watched her walk out a front door into gunfire to protect 40 people who couldn't read her name. And I thought about her father holding out 4 days in a chair, and I thought about every other person I'd watched my employer break, and I decided I was done holding the lamp. He looked at last directly at the man who'd owned him for 11 years. You should have let her freeze on that coach. Instead, you sent me to fetch her, and she taught me something I'd forgot a man could feel. He turned back to the judge. I'll tell you everything. Names, dates, graves, where the bodies are. I'm not doing it for mercy. I know there's a rope at the end of this for me too. I'm doing it because she earned it standing in that yard. Ask your questions. He talked for 2 days. When he was done, there was nothing left of the most powerful man in the territory, but a convict awaiting sentence, and the empire of stolen paper he'd built came apart deed by deed. The land came back. Not quickly and not all at once. The law moves like a glacier, even when it moves the right way, but it came. The widow Henderson signed for her farm on a spring morning and wept so hard she couldn't hold the pen, and Clara guided her shaking hand the way the old woman had once held hers by the stove. The Tate Quarter section went to Tate's widowed sister. Family by family, name by name, the valley that had been hollowed out by forged paper filled back up with living people, and at the center of all of it, more often than not, stood Samuel Whitmore's daughter, with the worn black Bible that had become less a piece of evidence than a kind of scripture for the whole county, proof that the truth written small and carried far enough could outlast the men who killed to bury it. She and Nathan married that same spring under the mountain pines as the last snow melted off the ridges and the entire valley came. The families he'd defended the town that had ridden out in the night. Cobb standing up beside Nathan with his hat over his heart, and his one good eye streaming the widow Henderson sitting in the front row in a new dress that the reclaimed farm had paid for. I want to say something, Nathan said to the gathered crowd before the preacher could begin, and then I'll be quiet the rest of my life if she asks me to. That'll be the day, Cobb muttered. 6 years ago, this valley taught me that winter takes things. It took my brother. It took the woman I was going to marry. It took my belief that a man gets more than one chance." His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. "And then a coach went down in a blizzard, and I rode out certain I was going to lose one more thing to the cold. Instead, I found the reason I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting at all." He took Clara's hand. "I told her once I'd waited years for her. I was wrong. I wasn't waiting years. I was waiting my whole life. I just didn't know her name yet." The years that followed were not quiet, because Clara Cole did not believe in quiet. She opened a school in Red Creek for the children of frontier families who'd never had one, and she taught them to read, and the first book she taught from every year was her father's Bible, so that no child in that valley would ever again grow up unable to read the difference between an honest line and a forged one. She kept the ledger sense her father had given her and turned the ranch's books into the steadiest in the territory. When a widow lost a husband to a hard winter, it was Clara who appeared at the door with the law on her side and the deed protected before the banks could circle. The valley took to calling her half joking and half not the woman who never let winter take anything again. And Nathan became what he'd quietly always been. Not the lonely man in the locked-up house, but the one neighbors rode to when the law and the money got tangled, the protector who stood in the door. The locked chest in his bedroom, the one Clara had wondered about that first frozen week, turned out to hold nothing but a tintype of a young man and a young woman, his brother and his Sarah, and a few letters gone soft with handling. He showed her the night before the wedding, and she did not ask him to put them away, and he never did. There was room in the man she'd learned for the grief and the joy both. That was the whole secret of him. They had children. Then those children had children. The ranch grew until it was the largest in 3 counties, and the school grew until it needed 3 teachers, and the valley grew from a robbed-out graveyard into the kind of town people moved toward instead of fleeing. And every holiday, the porch-filled children and grandchildren, ranch hands grown old in their service, the school teachers, the neighbors, the Henderson grandchildren and great-grandchildren generations who knew the story of the blizzard the way other families knew scripture, because in that valley, it nearly was. It was on one such evening, decades on, that an old woman and an old man sat alone on the porch after the others had gone, in the way they'd sat 10,000 evenings watching the first snow of the season come soft across the same Wyoming mountains that had nearly killed her the day they met. Nathan's hand found hers. The knuckles were swollen now, the scars long faded, but the grip was the same. "Remember the blizzard," he said. Clara laughed low and warm, the laugh she'd first surprised out of herself walking rope to him through the storm. "The one where I was sure I was going to die in a snowdrift 2 miles from a town I'd never see." "No." Nathan shook his head slowly, his eyes on the falling snow and on 60 years of life behind it. "Not that one. The one where my waiting finally ended." Clara turned her hand in his and held it the way she'd held it across a burned kitchen table a lifetime ago, when they were 2 broken people who didn't yet know they'd been aimed at each other all along. "You know what I've decided after all these years," she said. "My father didn't send me west to be saved, and he didn't send me to be a shield either, whatever you used to say. He sent me here because he knew the truth that took us both half a lifetime to learn." She looked out at the snow, unafraid of it, as she had not been afraid of anything since the morning she walked out a front door into gunfire. Love isn't something the world hands you when you've suffered enough to deserve it. It isn't luck, and it isn't fate, and it isn't a stranger's promise in a letter. Love is a thing 2 people build board by board, winter by winter, one faithful choice at a time, until it's strong enough that no storm on God's earth can take it down. The snow fell over the mountains that had brought them together, over the valley they had saved, over the school and the reclaimed farms and the porch where their whole family slept warm behind them. And as Nathan Cole lifted his wife's hand to his lips, the way he had every night of their life together, he knew with the certainty of a man who had once lost everything and built it all back again, that the storm which had nearly killed them had instead given them the only thing that ever truly lasts, and that the love they had made together with their own 2 hands across a lifetime of faithful days would stand long after they were gone, unbroken and unshaken, for as long as that valley remembered how to tell the story.